Mm. Interesting articles with us. One's from Motley Fool, discussing some potential big shifts being considered, particularly some proposed by President Trump.
And the other piece we have is from Maury Backman. He gives us more of a timeline on when Social Security benefits could potentially start to shrink if, things keep going the way they are.
So our mission today is to really unpack the insights from these articles, try to understand the key challenges facing the Social Security system, and ultimately help you get a handle on how these potential changes could impact your own financial future.
Sounds good. Let's start by maybe getting a clear picture of where Social Security stands right now.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to forget just how many people rely on this. The Motley Fool article points out over 52 million retirees currently getting benefits.
Wow, yeah.
And the average monthly payout is nearly $2,000.
Which, okay, maybe it doesn't sound like a massive amount, but it's absolutely crucial for a huge majority of retirees. That same article, it references some Gallup surveys, notes that somewhere between 80% and 90% of retirees depend on Social Security, at least to some extent, to cover their living expenses.
Right. And that's exactly why this looming financial shortfall in the system is such a critical issue. Motley Fool highlights a staggering number. A $23.2 trillion funding obligation shortfall.
23 trillion.
Yeah. Think of it like this. That's the gap between what money's projected to come in versus what's been promised to be paid out.
Right.
The implication here is pretty clear. The current system just isn't on a sustainable path long term.
Right. And that shortfall leads directly to these concerns about the OASI Trust Fund. That's the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund. Basically, it's the savings account for Social Security. And both articles we looked at project that this fund could be depleted, relatively soon.
The timelines aren't exactly the same. Motley Fool suggests maybe around 2033. While Maury Backman's analysis points a bit later, towards 2035.
Yeah.
But the key takeaway isn't the exact year, right? It's that we're looking at a potential turning point, probably within the next decade or so.
And it's really vital to understand, as Backman emphasizes, the Social Security isn't just going to vanish overnight. It won't disappear entirely. The system's primarily funded through ongoing payroll taxes. So, as long as people are working and contributing, benefits will continue to be paid out in some form.
However, the real risk, and this is the big concern, is the potential for significant benefit cuts if lawmakers don't act to address this funding gap.
Yeah.
Both sources raise this possibility. The estimates seem to hover around a 20% to 21% reduction in what retirees might actually receive.
And a cut like that, that would obviously have a major impact on the financial security of millions of people.
Absolutely. So with that kind of baseline understanding of the current state, let's pivot a bit. Let's look at some specific changes that have been proposed, particularly those highlighted in the Motley Fool article about President Trump's recent actions and stated intentions.
Okay. Right. The article details several sort of administrative changes within the Social Security Administration since his second term began. Things like staff reductions, a move to end paper check payments. I think the deadline is September 30, 2025.
Yeah, that's what it said.
Changes to personal ID procedures, and also a shift in how they handle overpayment recoveries.
Yeah, that overpayment clawback change.
Yeah.
Moving to a 50% recovery rate until the full amount is repaid.
Yeah.
That could certainly create some financial challenges for people who mistakenly get paid too much.
Definitely. And then, of course, there's the nomination of a new SSA commissioner, the head of the Social Security Administration.
So these administrative shifts, they're certainly noteworthy. They signal maybe a change in direction. But the really drastic change, as the Motley Fool article calls it, is President Trump's stated desire to completely eliminate the tax on Social Security benefits.
Okay, let's unpack this one. Because, on the surface, the idea of not paying taxes on your Social Security income, it sounds pretty good to a lot of people, doesn't it?
It does.
But as we know, there's often more to the story. This tax, it hasn't always been around, has it?
That's exactly right. The taxation of benefits actually came in as part of the Social Security Amendments of 1983. It was, interestingly, a bipartisan effort back then aimed at strengthening the program's finances.
Okay.
Initially, up to 50% of your benefits could be taxed if your provisional income went over certain thresholds. And provisional income is basically your adjusted gross income, plus any non-taxable interest, plus half of your Social Security benefits.
Right. And those original income thresholds were, $25,000 for single filers?
Yep.
And $32,000 for married couples filing jointly. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Those thresholds have never been adjusted for inflation.
Never. Think about how much the cost of living, everything has gone up since 1983.
Exactly. So because those thresholds haven't budged, what was originally designed to affect only about maybe 10% of higher income senior households now impacts roughly half of all senior households.
Yeah. So a much, much larger portion of retirees are now subject to this tax than originally intended.
So while getting rid of this tax might seem like a straightforward win for many retirees, the Motley Fool article really digs into some potentially significant, maybe unintended
And
consequences.
this is where we need to look beyond that immediate appeal, right? Because while, yes, it would put more money in the pockets of many retirees right away, eliminating the benefit tax would also remove a very substantial source of funding for Social Security itself.
How substantial are we talking?
Well, in 2023, it was actually the third largest income source for the entire program.
Wow, third largest. Okay.
The article quantifies just how significant this revenue stream is. They point out that taxing benefits is projected to generate nearly $944 billion in total income for Social Security just between 2024 and 2033.
Almost $1 trillion.
Almost $1 trillion. That's a massive amount of money that, helps keep the system afloat.
So the key takeaway here isn't just the big number. It's that getting rid of this revenue stream could drastically accelerate the timeline for those potential benefit cuts we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Potentially by years.
If you remove such a large funding source, that OASI trust fund would likely be depleted much, much faster.
Which could, ironically, lead to the very benefit reductions that retirees are hoping to avoid.
And here's another really important point the article brings up. Who actually benefits most from eliminating this tax? It would disproportionately help retirees with mid to higher incomes, because they're the ones more likely to have incomes above those fixed thresholds and actually pay taxes on their benefits now. It wouldn't necessarily provide any extra financial relief to those lower income retirees who rely most heavily on Social Security just to make ends meet. So it's not really a universally beneficial change, is it?
That's a crucial nuance, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a policy change that could actually widen the gap rather than necessarily helping those most in need. And then, we have to consider the political realities of actually trying to make such a big change happen.
Right. Amending the Social Security Act, it requires 60 votes in the Senate. That's a pretty high bar, especially given the current political climate.
Definitely.
The Motley Fool article notes there's likely a lack of Democratic support for this kind of proposal. And even within the Republican Party, there might be some serious concerns about the long-term financial stability of the program if you suddenly eliminate nearly $1 trillion in projected revenue.
So, while the idea of getting rid of the tax on Social Security benefits might be politically popular with some groups, the analysis suggests it could actually have some pretty serious negative impacts on the overall financial health of the system. And potentially, hasten the need for those benefit cuts down the line.
Okay, so now turning to Maury Backman's article, she does remind us that benefit cuts, well, they aren't necessarily a foregone conclusion.
That's an important point. Backman points out that lawmakers do still have the ability, the time to take action. They can address the projected funding shortfall and potentially prevent or at least lessen the severity of those cuts.
And she briefly touches on some of the, commonly discussed potential solutions, things like increasing the payroll tax rate that both employees and employers pay, or maybe eliminating the wage cap on Social Security taxes. That means higher earners would pay taxes on all their income, not just up to a certain limit like now.
Or making further adjustments to the full retirement age, pushing it back even later.
But, as Backman rightly points out, each one of these potential solutions comes with its own set of pretty significant drawbacks and, let's face it, political challenges.
Oh, definitely.
Raising payroll taxes could put a bigger burden on the current workforce, especially lower and middle income workers.
Right.
Eliminating the wage cap. That would likely face strong opposition from higher earners and some business groups.
And pushing the retirement age even later, that could disproportionately impact people in physically demanding jobs, or those maybe with health issues who can't work longer. There are no easy answers here.
No, there really aren't. And given these complexities and the sort of lack of easy fixes at the legislative level, Backman really emphasizes the importance of individual preparation.
Which brings it back to you, the listener.
Exactly. For those of you still working, this means prioritizing boosting your personal savings and investments as much as you possibly can. Build your own safety net.
And for those already in retirement or getting close, it might involve taking a hard look at your spending habits, maybe rethinking some things, exploring potential alternative income streams, just in case those benefit cuts do end up happening.
So, okay, let's try and bring this all together for you. What are the main takeaways?
Essentially, both of the sources you shared paint a picture of a Social Security system that's facing significant financial headwinds. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Benefit cuts, potentially within the next decade, are a very real possibility if lawmakers don't take action.
And these proposed changes we discussed, like eliminating the tax on benefits, while they might sound appealing on the surface, they carry some pretty significant and complex consequences that could potentially worsen the long-term financial outlook for the entire system.
So understanding these potential shifts is absolutely crucial for your long-term financial planning. We can't stress that enough. While the future isn't set in stone, obviously being well-informed allows you to proactively prepare and, consider different financial scenarios for your own retirement.
And this whole discussion raises, I think, an important question for you to think about after we finish up here. Consider this. The tax on Social Security benefits, it wasn't part of the original design of the system back in the 30s, right?
Right.
And its expansion, the fact that it affects so many retirees now, is largely because those income thresholds were just never indexed to inflation. So given that, what other fundamental assumptions that we hold about retirement, about social safety nets, might need to be reevaluated in the coming years as our economy and society continue to change?
That's some really vital food for thought there. Thank you all for joining us for this deep dive into the future of Social Security here on Financial Area.
Welcome to Financial Area.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Paul. Today, we're tackling a topic that's definitely top of mind for many, the future of Social Security. We're going to be looking closely at some proposed changes and really what they could mean for you and your financial well-being.
Exactly. You, our listener, shared a couple of really interesting articles with us. One's from Motley Fool, discussing some potential big shifts being considered, particularly some proposed by President Trump.
And the other piece we have is from Maury Backman. He gives us more of a timeline on when Social Security benefits could potentially start to shrink if things keep going the way they are.
So our mission today is to really unpack the insights from these articles, try to understand the key challenges facing the Social Security system, and ultimately help you get a handle on how these potential